Well, aloha everyone, and welcome to the first Hawaii Small Business Conference. We're going to segue into cybersecurity, and I just want to tell you a short story. I used to work for a major defense contractor, and all the bosses were on the East Coast, and I was out here in Hawaii, so with a 6-hour time difference, they had plenty of time to fire emails at me for 6 hours, so I would show up to work, and there'd be this many emails in my box. So I'd go through them one by one in a hurry, hadn't had my coffee. Got one, it was kind of an odd message. It was a security message, and it instructed me I was going to catch on fire unless I clicked on the thing, and it was from my company, so I clicked on it. And it said, "Congratulations, you have failed the security test and are now scheduled for mandatory cybersecurity training." So I did not do well there. So now it's my privilege to introduce the next two speakers to you. Edward Arias is a special agent with the Federal Bureau of Investigation and is a member of this cybercrime squad in Honolulu. Matt Freeman is the senior manager for IP and managed services at Hawaiian Telcom, and they're going to talk to you today about cybersecurity. Big businesses invest millions of dollars each year to protect themselves from cybersecurity attacks. What are you doing to protect your business? I read an interesting statistic the other day. It said that 60% of small companies go out of business within 6 months of a cyber attack. That's pretty scary. Don't let that be you. So ladies and gentlemen, Special Agent Edward Arias.
Aloha. I feel like I'm back in college. Oh, this is nice. Just a little bit about myself. I don't have a lot of time. I was asked to give you a presentation on all the bad things that can happen, but you only got 15 minutes to do it. So just imagine with the previous presenter here talked about all of the technology and how things are changing. And somewhere, probably in Eastern Europe, there's a conference just like this going on, and all the bad guys are figuring out a new way to get to come at you, right? So we're their targets. This is what we do on my squad. This is kind of what we do for a living. There is no way that in the time that I have I can talk about everything. So what I tried to do was kind of hard. How do I get the things that we're seeing the most? And I kind of tried to just stay on what we're seeing here in Hawaii. My office covers the state of Hawaii, American Samoa, Guam, Tinian, Saipan, and a lot of little islands in the middle there. It's a lot of territory for us to cover. And we see all kinds of things going on. We are not a very big office, but we try to do the best that we can to protect the public. That's what our main role is. I've been in the Bureau now for 21 years, going on 22. As of Friday, I am the oldest agent in the Honolulu division of the FBI. So we have thank you. I said that last week at an AARP conference, and everybody was cheering and all that other stuff. I said, yay for the old people. We have mandatory retirement at age 57. I turned 57 in June. I am not going to retire because our newer director, Comey, has instituted a thing where you can extend a year at a time. So I just got my extension a couple of weeks ago, so I'm happy. I'm not going to be unemployed in June. What I'm going to talk about is, and I think Jerry talked about it perfectly, kind of the things that we're seeing. There is a misconception out there that if you're in a small business, why would they come after me? Why not go? I look at it this way. If I'm a bank robber, do I want to hit Bank of Hawaii's main office 2 blocks away from a police station, a lot of security guards walking around? No, what I want to do is I want to look for a branch kind of out of the way, further away from a police station so that their response time would be a lot slower. And I may not get as much money, but if I do it enough times, it's a lot less risk versus trying to rob the main branch, right? I may get a lot more money, but it's a lot higher risk. This is kind of what's going on with the bad guys. Yes, they're going after Google and all the big companies. You'll hear about some of the hacks that have happened. I'll talk about that real quick. But by and large, you are the demographic that they're going after. You don't have millions of dollars to spend in cybersecurity. You do the best that you can. And so they know that, and that's how they're going to come at you. And it's just not the hacking, it's all of the stuff that you're seeing. Just like Jerry was talking about, get the email, click here, you click there, and now you've compromised your entire network. And we sort of talked about that. So just a little definition here, internet fraud is the use of the internet service software to defraud victims. You know, the old days of the fast-talking guy coming to your house to try to sell you something that was bogus is kind of gone. What makes it more difficult is now they can be anywhere in the world. And what we are seeing is a lot of stuff coming out of Nigeria. You guys all know the Nigerian fraud and all of that stuff. And then, of course, Eastern Europe, especially the more sophisticated, like ransomware. That was written by a Russian hacker, and this stuff is everywhere right now. So what I'm going to do is, because of the shortness of time, I kind of made a top 10 list here, and we'll go through this real quick. I'm sure you guys are familiar with the overpayment scams. This one is the one where you are going to do some kind of service, and you get a check for way more than you agreed on, and the person on the other side, this is mostly Nigerian stuff, says, oh yeah, I overpaid. You tell you what, deposit the check and send me back the difference. And of course the check is going to bounce after you've sent them, wired them the money back, and there's no way to get it back. So be very careful on these. Investment scams. These are actually pretty prevalent. If you own a business, you have income, I mean, you have money. And so what they do is they try to target you and say, hey, you give us money, we'll give you incredible rates of return. We've had companies here in Hawaii that have gotten involved in this, and I know one person in particular that has lost upwards of $500,000 on these. She thought that this was a great idea. She was getting great returns. It's like a pyramid scheme. Eventually it collapses, and now she gets nothing, and she's out the money. This is an interesting one. We've had this happen. It's called the Vanity Scam, where you get a company from a call from some association or an email from some association telling you that you've won an award or that you have some outstanding thing that you guys are doing. And long story short, they get you involved in this, and you pay a membership fee to join some thing that doesn't even exist. And it's a vanity scam because, of course, we all think that we're doing a great job, right? We all want to get that trophy. Believe it or not, this one is a big issue. People getting involved with social media or those dating websites. And this is what we call a vector. This is just a way to sort of get into your company or you, compromise you. We've had this happen a bunch of times, and I tell when we get the phone call, you know the person on the other line is probably some 50-year-old man sitting in his underwear on a terminal, gets a picture of a really attractive girl, and that's who you think you're talking to. And I hate to tell it to some guys, but you're probably not good looking enough to get a girl that hot looking, you know. And sure enough, something always happens, and I need money, or they send them stuff to compromise their computer system, right? I put this in kind of in a general category. We see a lot of this. I would tell you that if I check my email right now, I've probably gotten 80 emails. I would say that about 80% of those emails is some kind of scam of some sort. And unfortunately, you know, they target that's why I spoke at AARP last week. They target our elder community who isn't very tech savvy, who believes that they've won the Nigerian lottery. You know, have you ever been to Nigeria? No. Where are you from? Hawaii. Why would you have won the Nigerian lottery? But they still believe it's true, or they'll call me up saying, I won the lottery, but they want some money. No, it's fake. It's not true. What's the old saying? If it's too good to be true, it is. Please. I include in here smishing and vishing. You saw in the last presentation how everything's now consolidating to the cell phone. Well, smishing is getting bad stuff over SMS, the text, and vishing is the voice over IP. How many of you, a few weeks ago before the taxes were due, started getting the phone calls from the IRS saying that you owed money, and if you didn't pay, we're going to get the local police to come arrest you? Yeah, I get those all the time at home. I get the other ones about there's something wrong with your computer. We're Microsoft. We're going to fix your computer. If you'll notice on all of those calls, the person has kind of an accent. That's a clue. And their accent there is not a local Hawaiian person accent. They sound Indian or kind of Russian, that kind of thing. You got to really be careful. And don't believe it because it's an 808 number or a number in the mainland. Using certain techniques, they can spoof the number. So even though it looks like it's coming from the United States, it actually isn't. Business email compromise. This is a huge problem here. This is what it is. So now after your email has been compromised because you clicked on something you shouldn't have clicked on and you've opened up your email server, the bad guys monitor your email. And what they're looking for is you communicating with your clients, and when it's time to pay, a mysterious email comes from whoever it is you think you're communicating, and it says, hey, by the way, we've changed our bank, so I need you to wire that $250,000 to this bank versus the one we spoke about originally. I get these phone calls all the time. And in here, I talk about the distinct flavors. We don't really need to go over the detail because they've categorized them. You know, the bogus invoice scheme, CEO fraud, where you get an email from the CEO saying, hey, we need to pay that vendor, transfer out $250,000 to that vendor. And of course, you do it because it's the boss saying to do it, right? We have the other one that they look for lower level employees who were involved in the paying of the bills and again send an email saying, hey, we need to get the money transferred, all right? How do you prevent this? Anybody have an idea how to prevent this? I heard it. Make a phone call. Do not transfer money based solely on emails. You have to verify that the person you're talking to via the email is the one who's actually, you know, the one that you're going to send the money to. Just had a company defrauded. They lost $27,000, which to you, some of you may not seem like a lot, but it is to a small company because their client started receiving emails and wire transferred the money. And typically the wire transfer goes overseas and we have no way of getting it back. There are some countries that are friendlier and will work with us. We had a case with Vietnam. We were able to get $1 million back. If it goes to Nigeria, don't even bother calling me because you're not going to get it back. Or Syria or places that were North Korea. Yeah, I am not going to North Korea to get your money back. This is might seem like this is kind of silly, but it's not. We get these a lot too, where they create a domain and they change one of the letters in there, and you know, we're such a, remember the last presenter was talking about multitasking and we're doing 5 things at one time? The crooks know this. So they'll do something like that, right? They'll add an extra A to Amazon and you don't even notice it because you're moving so fast. And here you think that you're actually dealing with this company when in fact you're dealing with the bad guys. Vacation rental scams. This is more along the lines, if you own a vacation rental property, the bad guys will rent your vacation rental for you, but they're not going to give you the money. And even, I won't say funnier, but even sadder is when they rent your house and a family comes in from the mainland with all the kids and the luggage and they knock on your door of your house saying, hey, we're here for our vacation. So I know here in Hawaii, and I have a lot of friends that have rental properties, you have to really be careful. And then you also get the overpayment scam they want to rent your place, but they send you a check of more than you asked for, and you know how that goes. So be careful with that. Ransomware, big problem here. In particular, the encrypting ransomware, the crypto wall. If you're not familiar with this, it goes in and it encrypts all of your important files, and then they try to ransom you. And then they have a little clock there that counts down and basically says, if you don't pay by this time, you won't be able to get your files back. We recommend that you do not pay the money. We have cases in the FBI where a lot of terrorist groups are using this technique. So what you're doing is you're funding ISIS or some terrorist group when you pay them the money, and then there's no guarantee that you're going to get your files back anyway. Okay? What is the best way to protect against this? Back up your files. Absolutely. Phony government scams. Talked a little bit about this. Getting letters, email, phone calls, a lot of phone calls about you owe the government money, people claiming to be who they're not. We had a series of them going around. There were letters basically saying that the director of the FBI, you had to pay them some money, and these are all scams. We will not call you. When we do show up, it's usually at 3 o'clock in the morning, carrying a bunch of guns. But that won't happen to any of you guys, I guarantee you. And of course, I can't go without mentioning hacking breaches. These have been going on increasingly. In fact, I have a list here of the different breaches that we've seen over the last couple of years. And by far, the most troubling one is the 2016 election. And the director of the FBI was before Congress testifying on some of this stuff this morning. So more and more, we're going to see this kind of stuff. And a lot of these hacks are very sophisticated, and the worst part about them is that they're just not they won't be the Nigerians, they may be the Eastern Europeans, but more and more, they're actually starting to be nation states. They're actually countries, China, North Korea, that are actually going in and doing this kind of thing. Okay, and I think I'm out of time. So, Matt?
All right. Hello, everybody. Yes, sir. Go ahead. Thanks for that great information, Ed. It's always good to hear the perspective of somebody in law enforcement about attacks that are happening in real-world situations. Hi, everybody. I'm Matt. I'm here today to offer you some advice on how you can help protect your business from attacks. I'd like to thank the Maui Economic Development Board for inviting me to speak here today. I don't normally get to go outside of the office, so I appreciate your patience, and if I start to ramble, just flag me down or something. All right, so I'm going to give you some free advice, and I figure if you're going to take free advice, if I can figure this out. Ooh, buttons. Oh, there we go. All right, I want you to know a little bit about who's giving you some advice. So, my name is Matt. I've been at Hawaiian Telcom for about 6 years now. Specifically, I've built and I maintain and operate a cybersecurity defense program with them, specifically focused on businesses. I've been doing business in Hawaii for about 17 years now. All of my experience is taking care of small businesses in Hawaii. So, I do have a pretty good perspective on what organizations need. Through the different positions I've held, I've probably worked with 200 or 300 different businesses. So this is my demographic, right? This is all I really do. I've got a couple security certifications. I kind of know what I'm doing. I try to pretend at least. Let's see what else we got. Oh. Big green one on top. Green one on top. All right. Let's look at the problem here. What do we got? Basically, like Ed said, cyber attacks are going up. Business losses are going up. So I believe that Hawaii's businesses just don't have enough resources to help defend themselves. I want to touch on a couple of stats here that I've pulled together. This information is from the 2017 Verizon Data Breach Incident Report. It's a pretty well-respected recap of cyber attack trends. So a couple of things I want to highlight here from each column. About 51% of all attacks are launched by organized crime. 81% of these successful breaches take advantage of weak or stolen passwords. 40-ish% or so are on retail, hospitality, and small businesses. And 73% of these attacks are financially motivated. So what is that telling us? Basically, cyber gangs are using simple attacks to steal money from small businesses. So you guys got to watch out. All right, so let's talk about the problem. You just don't have help, right? I mean, if you're lucky, you have an IT person. Sometimes that IT person is a contractor. Sometimes they're full-time. I tend to hire a lot of security engineers. As of last week, there's 1,400 open security engineer positions across the state of Hawaii, so it's hard to find the right type of help. So if you're lucky, you do have a full-time IT person. You know, they probably do a lot of different things. They're wearing a lot of different hats. From what I see, most IT people are pretty good at the help desk stuff. Printers, servers, workstations, taking care of your office, Excel's not working, they've got that down. Most of them are pretty good at networks, routers, switches, firewalls. You do start to see some nervous IT guys when stuff breaks, but nobody's got time for cybersecurity. This is the most common scenario, right? You don't have anybody. You are the IT person and the owner, CEO, accountant. You're doing whatever it takes to keep your business going. You barely have time to keep up with the day-to-day. How are you going to take care of cybersecurity? All right, we got this, don't worry. So let's see what we can do. I've got a couple of recommendations in these next slides that will give you some low-budget, high-impact results. If you don't have a staff, these are things you can do. If you do have a staff, we can talk about a bigger program. But basically, we're going to build it around planning, patching, prioritizing your problems, and training. Just a quick challenge. I bet if you spent about half of your week focusing on cybersecurity defenses, you'd be able to bring your baseline up to a sufficient level to fight off most attacks. All right, where are we going to start? We'll start with the basics. Almost every new job I start with a customer, I have to say, what do you got? What are we looking at? What are we protecting? And the answer is almost all the same. I don't know. We've got a couple of servers. We've got a couple of workstations. I got some fancy printers. Nobody really has a good inventory of what they got. So I say start there. Take an inventory of what you have. Figure out where your critical assets are, which workstations are used by accountants, which workstations are used by the owner. Those are the ones most likely to have sensitive data. So we need to identify those, and we need to prepare a plan for each one. Second advice, you guys already heard it from Ed, back up everything. At least once a month, you need to have a backup rotation on your servers, your workstations, anything you can. So whether you're doing it in the cloud, whether you have an external drive you're backing up to, back up everything you can. Finally, try and think of IT security like you would insurance. You probably have your tax filings, your incorporation documentation, your legal forms. Why don't you have your IT information documented? Something else we can do that's pretty easy. Let's learn about what the attacks look like. You know, Ed went over a lot of the common scams, and almost all of those are social engineering. According to that Verizon report, 43% of successful attacks involve some form of social engineering. The two most common are phishing emails and CEO fraud. I read an article last year. The FBI estimated CEO fraud accumulated about $2 billion worth of losses. So it's out there. All right. So I'm taking the position you don't have to have a $1 million program. You just have to have some basics in place. You have to basically make it so that you're not an easy target. All right, I'm going pretty quick here. All right. Everybody's going to have a bad day, right? The common phrasing that you hear, it's not if you get hacked, but when you get hacked. So prepare in advance, know what you have to do, have an incident response plan, discuss it with your staff. You know, there is no 911 for ransomware, so when you do get attacked, you should have a plan for what you're going to do. All right, so let's talk about some specific steps that I think you guys can go home with and implement pretty soon. All right, we talked about it. Make a backup of everything you care about. Weekly, daily, monthly, those are ideal, but at least monthly, make a backup of everything you can. If a site supports it, please consider using their two-factor authentication solution. Two-factor authentication basically provides a second layer of control around access. For example, if you set up a bank account, you log in through a web browser, and they will send you an SMS with the code that you put in, provides extra layer. Free, easy to use. Don't reuse your passwords. I know this is a tough one. But it would be, what we see from one of those earlier stats is that most of the breaches are using compromised passwords. So it would be really unfortunate if your favorite internet forum got breached and you had the same username and password there that you had at the bank. They would compromise you. Something easy to do, patch all your systems regularly. Routers, switches, firewalls, workstation servers, just maintain a patching program. Maintaining a pretty standard level of system integrity, what the FBI likes to call cyber hygiene, that will prevent a lot of simple attacks. I mentioned it earlier, but try and think of IT security like you do your car, your health, or your fire insurance. It's just something that you need to prepare for. It's just fact of life. Have your team take the time to learn the basics of phishing and social engineering. There's a lot of social engineering attacks out there. There is plenty of free resources on YouTube, other internet video sites where you can learn from experts. And then finally, consider the cloud. The cloud is a good option for your mobile services. You can move your servers out there. You're basically pushing security off to the administrator of the cloud. Something to keep in mind. I don't always recommend it, but it is something to think about. All right. A quick obligatory. We do sell these services at Hawaiian Telcom. I'm not normally a salesperson. Like I said, I stay inside the office and just actually do the work. But we offer specialized consulting services for all these different things that can help small businesses. And finally, I was trained that every IT presentation has to have cat pictures. So I will leave this here. And I got through my presentation a little bit quicker than I was supposed to, but that'll give us more time for questions. So thanks, everybody. I appreciate your time.
Does the FBI have an outreach program that keeps the public informed about ongoing threats?
So we run a program called Infragard. I'm the Infragard coordinator. The point of the program is to send bulletins out. We have meetings. It's to try to get ahead of the bad guys. When we start seeing trends, we talk about them. We send these bulletins out. Pretty easy to join. First of all, I have some flyers in my bag, and I'll leave them here if you want to pick it up after the session's done today. But even better, you can go on Google and type Infragard. It's INFRAGARD. So guard is spelled a little different. And it's a one-page form you fill out. You have to be a U.S. citizen. And I always say this, not have an extensive criminal record. Trust me, there are a lot of things that the federal government does bad. Keeping track of criminals is not one of them. So I tell this all the time, and then I run the background on it, and I'll find out the person's been arrested like 5 times. And that's going to get you denied. So the reason we do that is we bring in all the security professionals from the banks, from business. I mean, everybody from any walk of life. We don't want you sitting there with someone who's there because they're a criminal and they're trying to figure out our investigation on them. Okay? So I encourage all of you to join. Unfortunately, our meetings are just on Oahu. We do not do meetings on the neighbor islands. However, you'll still get the bulletins, and if you really want to participate, and some companies actually do, they fly in when we have our meeting every 2 months just for the day to attend the meeting.
Okay, that's great.
Can you spell that again?
It's INFRAGARD, Infragard, one word.
Okay. So, oh, sorry.
Is it a .com? How do you find that?
If you go to Google and just put Infragard, it'll come up. It's probably a .gov.
Okay. So we're going to ask Matt a question. Matt, there was a lot of discussion about how much it would cost. So what would you recommend is the best investment for a small business in cybersecurity defense?
You know, from what I find, tools are expensive. They're hard to maintain. I personally prefer to invest in people, right? If you have an IT person, start sending them to some training that keeps a good job here at home. And it starts to develop an extra resource that you'll have for your team that can eventually identify threats, respond to threats. You know, it adds another hat to your IT guy. But I prefer to invest in people where possible. I think it's going to go a lot farther than buying a new tool.
Okay. So here's one from the audience, and I guess I'll give this one to Edward. Is there a place, if you feel like you've been scammed or the victim of a scam, what should you do?
The first thing we recommend is there is an organization called IC3. It's IC3.org, I believe. But again, you could search for it in Google. And this is the Internet Crime Complaint Center. It allows you to fill out a form, put exactly on there what happened to you. And what the FBI does is we aggregate all of those complaints, and they are sent to the field offices. So now, instead of having a $200 complaint that I have to go to the U.S. Attorney's Office to try to open a federal case on, I'll have a $20 million case because guaranteed you weren't the only one that was defrauded. That's what we recommend. If you have something going on and it's large scale, call the office and ask to speak to one of the cyber agents on the squad, and when we can talk to you about it. In a lot of instances, your insurance companies, et cetera, may ask you to call the local police and file a report. In a lot of cases, if you have something going on and the bad guy is here in Hawaii or on Maui, your best bet is the police department. We tend to get involved interstate and international.
So if, Matt, you mentioned on one of your slides there, I saw that consider the cloud. Is the cloud something that you would use as a backup to back up your data?
Well, unfortunately, the cloud means a lot of things to a lot of people, right? It's a big fluffy thing. It's an idea. The simplest way to think about it is putting your resources not on your site. Somebody else is taking care of it. So responsibility is always going to be yours to know what data is out there, and how to protect it. But the actual technical controls of cloud service providers are going to be pretty standardized and pretty robust. So it is a definite option to think about, because if you don't have an IT staff, for a relatively low monthly fee, you can outsource some of that services to a cloud service provider.
Could you recommend some by name?
Hawaiian Telcom. Okay, so we do sell it. We have we invested in a great data center on Oahu, and we have one on the Big Island as well. But Amazon Web Services, they're the industry leader. Microsoft Azure, they're right behind Amazon.
Okay.
If I can make a comment on that, the only thing that I recommend is that you do go with a service provider that you know, like Hawaiian Tel. Not that the FBI is recommending anyone. Do not go with the North Korean cloud services, because that's not good. If something happens, you have no way of getting your data back, and I have no authority to help you do that. So if you go with a known service provider, please do that. And let me make one other comment, and this is not just because I'm a Hawaiian Tel customer. We've had a lot of problems with people, including the DNC, that decided to put their email on some free Google, Hotmail, and things like that. When that gets compromised and you call Hotmail up, do you really think they're going to help you? You really need to get a do not run your business out of Hotmail. The best that I've been able to do with Hotmail is when an email account was compromised was Hotmail agreed to just shut it down. But they will not do anything for you because you're not really paying them. I highly recommend that you go with someone like Hawaiian Tel, who I can pick up the phone, call these guys, and start complaining because I pay the bills.
Maybe it would be interesting for the audience if you could each give a, without using names, an example of a cybersecurity local attack that you've dealt with to give an idea of what's out there.
So you guys saw the top 10 list up there? That was as a result of all the stuff that we've seen. The ransomware, another one that was popular a few months ago was the denial of service. I call it denial of service ransomware. You get an email that says, we're gonna denial of service you, and we're gonna take your website down. And they do a small denial of service attack, and then they're asking you for money and all that other stuff. Our experience has been that they're full of crap. That what they're doing is that they're hitting you with the maximum that they can do. They are not capable of doing 3 terabytes of data. And so I tell when I get calls from companies, do not pay the money, do not respond to them. And 99.9% of the time, the only reason I don't say 100% of the time, because there might be some instance somewhere that I haven't heard of, they go away. They move on to the next person. It's like the graphic he had up with the bear chasing the people. The slowest one is in the back is the one that needs to worry about it, right? So they're going to go after whoever bites, and whoever doesn't, they're just going to move on to the next company.
You know, we do see a lot of ransomware through businesses, and I would be interested to know, do you have a percentage of people that do pay the ransom? I know that's not the recommendation, but if they don't have backups, all of their business financial data is encrypted.
Yeah, they won't tell us if they pay the money.
That's kind of what I'm thinking. Yeah.
You know what I mean? I don't know of anyone that's paid. I will tell you that it is a problem, and there are some people that have paid. Mm-hmm. And the situation that we have is that we as the government cannot tell you, think about a traditional kidnapping, right? Someone kidnaps a loved one. The FBI can't tell you, absolutely you're not going to pay the money, and they're going to kill whoever they have. So what we try to do is we try to encourage you not to pay the money. We try to tell you to be prepared. This is a good time for you to realize to be prepared, so that when this happens, you can restore your backups and you don't have to pay the money. But if for some reason what they encrypted is something that you absolutely have to have, it is the plans to, you know, the secret thing that you have, you know, the recipe for Coca-Cola or something, then it's on you whether you're going to pay the money.
Yeah. So I do actually know somebody that's paid the ransom. And it was about a year and a half ago, and it was 1.5 Bitcoin, so that's pretty expensive. But what I learned is I saw that the criminal organization they had great customer service. They really made it easy for you to buy Bitcoin, connect over an encrypted, anonymous connection to them, transfer the money, and then they quickly release the funds. Or the data. So they had really good technical documentation about how to buy, how to pay, how to get your data back. I see businesses without that good documentation.
I see several questions about ransomware. So if you back up your data every night, the question asks, does that not get infected too?
Depends on where you're backing it up to. If you're backing it up locally, so the way that it works, ransomware will attack, well, you're inviting it in most cases, right? You're going to get an attachment in an email. Maybe you're in the accounting department. You receive an email that says invoice due. It's got a Word document. That document's got some macros embedded into it. It launches. It reaches out to the internet. It downloads the executable. It then attacks that workstation, locks it up real good, and then it starts to look across your network for what else it can try and lock down. So if you are backing up locally with an attached drive and this particular strain of malware can encrypt it, it will encrypt anything it can find. So the first thing you do is you really do want to unplug. You want to disconnect the network. You don't want to power down because you do want to leave something so that you can try and do some analysis or that you can try and recover. But you do want to stop the spread first and foremost.
Let me add, we had a recent case where after the analysis, it was determined that the ransomware, the crypto locker, actually came through a wireless machine that someone brought into the work area, because we found no trace of it on any of the other machines that were actually hardwired connected to the network.
I see we're really almost out of time, so I'm just going to ask one more question or ask you to discuss one more thing, and that's password strength, and you don't use it, not using the same password for different. Can you just, both of you, just maybe touch on the strength that's required?
Well, I will tell you from our perspective, I go out and I do these lectures all the time, and to me, the first line of defense is that password. Yet it is one of the things that people do the worst. Now, think about this, that in any security system, all those routers, all those appliances that are in there are pretty sophisticated. And what's the weakest link in any security system? The human being, right? So how many times you tell people don't use the password, and they still use it? And what do you guys think is the most common one now? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, or 8, depending on how many they require. And whenever I do these presentations, especially in the Washington, D.C. area, I always get people. Because if you're from Washington, D.C., if there's anybody in this room in here, what's the most common password? No, Redskins. It's the football team over there.
You know, just passwords are hard to remember sometimes if you make them too complex. So I would say look into a password manager. You know, you can get some of those for free. It will generate a random string. It'll encrypt it, and then all you have to do is basically click on your password manager, link that credentials to that site. You might not even know the password in some cases, but the system does. It's encrypted, really hard to intercept and decrypt.
Could you name a few of those generators for the audience?
Not offhand. You know, I'll look into it, and you can catch me at Pauhana.
Well, that does it for us. Thank you very much. Thank you, Ed. Thank you, Matt. I think this was fantastic. And that's it for us.